This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome to tonight's Board of Commissioners meeting. Couple things. If you can, keep yourself muted if you're not speaking. You can unmute yourself, I believe it was *6 if you're on a phone, or mute yourself with *6, or just use the mute feature on your phone. If you would like courtesy of the floor, feel free to send a chat message to me with your name and address, and I will throw you on a list and call you when we get to courtesy of the floor. We will also ask for courtesy of the floor if you're only on the phone when we get there also. So I think you are good to go, Tori.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. All right, I would like to call to order and welcome everybody to the June 17th meeting of the South Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners. We're going to start things off with a roll call vote, please, Renee.
Sure. Commissioner Walk.
Here.
Commissioner Mobilio.
Here.
Commissioner Kelly.
Here.
Commissioner Stetton.
Here.
And Commissioner Morgan.
Here. Thank you, Renee. If we could start off our tonight's meeting by a Pledge of Allegiance, if everyone would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the
United States of America,
and
to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. I'd like to note that all public sessions of the South Whitehall Township Board of Commissioners are electronically recorded. The electronic record is kept until the minutes of the meeting are approved and destroyed if a request is not made to retain the electronic version at that time. I'd also like to note that the board did meet in executive session this evening from 6 to 7 to discuss legal matters. That being said, we're going to move right into our agenda for this evening. And first on our agenda this evening is our meeting minutes for consideration and possible action. The first on the list are our June 3rd, 2020. These would be our Board of Commissioner meeting minutes. They're on page 3 of the Commissioner's packet for consideration. Are there any questions or comments from the board on the June 3rd Board of Commissioner meeting minutes?
Commissioner Morgan, I did have a couple of questions. In section B, when we discussed ordinance 50 amendment, I did make several questions that were pertinent to that weren't included to the minutes. So I would like that to be reviewed and added back in. I could certainly read them to you now, or I could send them to Tracy. But the same is true later in the meeting when we were courtesy of the floor reviewing comments with Commissioner Mobilio. I had read a statement that I would like included to reflect in the minutes.
Under section B, I'm not sure, what page are you referring to, Diane, of something you had mentioned?
Under the ordinance.
Okay.
Section
So what was it that was missing? Yeah, what was it that was missing in there that you would like to see?
Most of the conversations that I had, but I can just maybe email it to Tracy or have her review the meeting it was just excluded. There was quite some conversation going back and forth regarding reports. And
then my suggestion is, since we can't talk about it in detail tonight, is why don't you send your concerns or edits that you're saying to Tracy. We can check them against the recording, and then we can table the minutes for tonight and then look at adopting them at the next meeting.
Okay, perfect.
Because that'll give everybody a chance to review those meeting minutes again, because we can't just add stuff in without knowing what's going to be added back in. So we'd need to have a second look at those meeting minutes.
Absolutely.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Yes,
Yes.
Commissioner Walker.
I have essentially the same thing as Commissioner Kelly. I had comments on both of those subjects, and I've consolidated what I said down into a few sentences. But for the essence of time tonight, since we've already made the decision regarding Commissioner Kelly's comments, I'm willing to send my requested additions out so they can be checked against the video as well.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Stetton, Commissioner Mobilio, any other thoughts or comments from either of you on those meeting minutes? Nope. Okay. All right, so we're going to table the June 3rd meeting minutes. What we, get your questions, concerns to Renee and Tracy, and then we can certainly check them against the audio to make sure everything matches up. And we will talk about those meeting minutes at the next meeting. So next on our agenda for consideration and possible action are our June 10th, 2020 meeting minutes. And this was the meeting, the joint BOC and Planning Commission workshop meeting minutes. They're on page 17 of the board's packet for consideration and possible adoption this evening. Were there any questions or comments to the June 10th joint BOC PC workshop meeting minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion for approval for said minutes?
So moved.
The motion on the floor from Commissioner Kelly. We have a second from Commissioner Walk. Could I have a roll call vote, please, Renee?
Commissioner Walk,
Aye.
Commissioner Mobilio,
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly,
Aye.
Commissioner Stetton. I think we may have lost Joe.
Maybe he can put it in the chat if he's not. Is he muted?
I'm not sure. I don't, he is muted. Hold on.
Joe, if you're hearing us, if you could just put your vote in the chat, that would be helpful if we can't unmute you.
Looks like he's unmuted. Commissioner Stetton?
They're unmuting.
All right. Well,
Commissioner Morgan, do you want to cast your vote and then?
I'll cast my vote. My vote is yes. And Joe Stetton just put in a yes.
Okay.
In the chat.
Okay.
Commissioner Morgan, your video is frozen.
Looks good to me. She's moving on mine.
I'm fine.
I think it's mine.
Okay, so motion carries, and the June 10th meeting minutes passed. All right, next this evening, we have no ordinances, no resolutions. However, we have a variety of motions for consideration and possible action. We do have somebody that needs to go on mute. If you're not on mute, if you could please mute your phone. All right, great. All right. Oh, we got a lot of background noise. All right, first for this evening under motions, we have a motion for consideration requesting permission to award a bid for the Covered Bridge Park concrete project. Mr. Cope, could you help us out with this one? Or Mr. Cookett, whoever's leading the...
Sure. Sounds like we're still getting a lot of feedback. I don't know if everybody could check their mute buttons one last time.
Yeah, I don't know. Is any of the commissioners caller 9? I just don't want to mute someone who's needs to speak then.
That's okay. You can mute while we're giving the presentation.
Tori, you caller 2?
I don't know.
I'm on a
I don't know.
I'll just go ahead and get
Okay.
started. But tonight in front of us, we have an opportunity to rehabilitate the underutilized and dated playground equipment at Covered Bridge Park, which happens to be South Whitehall's largest park.
Hold on, Randy.
Yep.
That was caller 1 I took out, just so you guys know. It's probably one of the commissioners.
Okay.
So again, tonight we have an opportunity to rehabilitate the underutilized and dated playground equipment at Covered Bridge Park. User expectations, equipment features have dramatically changed for playgrounds since the 1990s, when the existing playground at Covered Bridge Park was installed. This project is listed as Phase A in the Covered Bridge Park Master Plan that was adopted in February of 2014. The project is supported by a $250,000 DCNR grant, $350,000 of budgeted open space impact fees, and $15,000 in local sponsorships from South Whitehall businesses and residents. As Todd Poole said last Wednesday night at the joint BOC and Planning Commission meeting, his firm's predicting that over the next 36 months, municipal recreational facilities like playgrounds will see a spike in users. While South Whitehall has many beautiful and many playgrounds to choose from, we lack that destination type playground that our neighboring communities currently offer. We will see an increase in residents and visitors searching for free outdoor recreational opportunities. Furthermore, there are numerous studies that show quality and modern recreational facilities lead to an increase in the length of stay one spends in a park. On top of that, there are numerous studies also showing a strong correlation between physical and mental health and spending an increased time in parks. So the short of that is, the nicer and more modern our facilities continue to be, the longer our residents will spend time in the outdoors in our parks, recreating and living a healthier lifestyle. So the first agenda item on tonight's docket here is a request to the Board of Commissioners to award the concrete bid that was previously approved for advertising. The bid was advertised twice in a local publication as required by law and was uploaded to the Penn Bid website. This bid included a base bid and 4 ad alternates, so staff could stay within budget. We could eliminate project or parts of this bid in order to keep this project within budget. 3 of these 4 bid alternates are not being recommended this evening. The 3 not being recommended this evening are the pavilion and pavilion footers, the pavilion pad, and the concrete sidewalk stamping. The 1 alternate we are seeking approval for this evening is a textured stamping on the perimeter edging that surrounds the play areas. We have received 4 proposals for this bid. Our purchasing agent has deemed T. Schaefer Contractors Incorporated to be the lowest responsive bidder and had positive feedback after doing reference checks. Staff is respectfully asking that the Board of Commissioners award the base bid and alternate number 9000-0006 to T. Schaefer Contractors Incorporated for a total amount of $103,384. Mike Cookitz and I are here to answer any questions from the board or public tonight. That concludes our presentation. We'll turn it back to the board.
Thanks, Randy. I just kind of wanted to mirror real quick what you had mentioned about what was discussed at our comprehensive plan meeting and about the future of parks across the entire country and Lehigh Valley, and more importantly for us here in South Whitehall Township. They become even more now post-COVID and during COVID an essential asset to our community. So we're very fortunate, and I see this project as just another way to better our community and the services we provide. So I'm in full support, and I think it's great. We'll open it up to any questions or comments to the board.
Well, Tori, Commissioner Morgan, I just wanted to kind of reiterate what you just said, and based on our conversations at the joint meeting last week, we heard relatively pessimistic economic news, unfortunately, and I think Joe Seton said it best when he said, "Do you have any good news to share with us today?" At that meeting, but what I heard was there's going to be a resurgence of a lot of different things like drive-ins and utilizing previously abandoned restaurant facilities and that sort of thing. And the one thing that, as Randy said, that was emphasized is the increased use of these parks and free facilities. I mean, from what I heard last week, it was, the future of economics in this township and across the country are going to be not particularly optimistic again. And when when a municipality is providing a free service, a free facility for children and families to play, that is the best that we can do for our residents when they're struggling to pay their bills and they're looking for activities and things for their children and families to do. So I think I'm very happy that we've been moving forward with this, that we decided we voted against stalling this project months ago, and that we're still moving full steam ahead with it.
Thanks, Matt. Any other questions, comments, thoughts from the board before we hit the public? All right. Are there any questions? Oh, go
Commissioner
ahead.
Kelly's trying to say something, but she's muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. Technical difficulties. So yes, I do agree. I did hear Todd Poole at our joint meeting talk about needing recreational facilities for people. And one of the topics he did talk about was revenue producing ones. So I think that's something as a township we could certainly look at in the future. But I was at the park over the weekend on Saturday and Sunday. It was beautiful weather, and saw quite a lot of people on the current playground and playing on the handball wall, walking on the greenway. And my concerns with this are not any different than the last time we voted on it. It is an interesting project and certainly an asset to the township. But my concern is we've been in a quarantine for the last 3.5 months, and we're in the yellow still. And our community is looking for ways to get outside and enjoy, and I've seen that. And it's a timing issue for me. It's something that I would not be in favor of ripping up that now at this point and taking away what we have currently for our residents to use every day. And we've also got our summer playground program going there as well. To disrupt this now, COVID certainly is the biggest disruptor of our time, and it's disrupted things from weddings to graduations. For the last 3 months, I think everybody's had to learn to certainly postpone things that they had planned. I know this has been in the works a long time. I keep asking myself what would be the hardship to postponing this, keeping our park the way that it is for the enjoyment of our residents, and looking at this again. Who knows, next spring, maybe when things get back to normal. That's my first point. My second point is, and always has been, also the financial cost to the township. I know we do have grant money and open space money, but obviously we're going to need public works to do an awful lot of this work as well. And we don't know where our budget is going to end up as far as revenue and impact that COVID's going to have on it. And we've talked as a finance committee and also as this full board to keep a watchful eye on spending on essential. I just question if this is the right time. I've got in the back of my mind, we need to know what our numbers are before we spend any dollars. Protecting our taxpayers from a potential tax increase at the end of the year is my #1 goal when we look at whether or not we're going to spend money right now. So I thank you to the Parks and Rec Department and staff who have pulled this all together. But unfortunately, as I said earlier, cause an awful lot of things that otherwise an awful lot of things along right now. Hope you heard that okay. I'm getting an awful lot of feedback from my computer.
Yeah, Commissioner Kelly, I just wanted to reiterate that this project has been planned to be constructed by our Public Works Department for over a year now. So we've been fully anticipating spending time down there in the park working on this. The access to the park will not be interrupted. It will not interfere with the existing playground activities that are down there that Mike Cookitz is running for our children or for our youth. The money is earmarked specifically for this project. I understand the timing concern, but I also want to reiterate that coming out of a pandemic, this is going to be something that our residents and visitors of Cover Bridge Park will be looking for. I certainly think there's a lot of value in this project coming out of a pandemic and giving people an opportunity to recreate in a quality facility, something where they're going to spend a lot of addition.
Oh, we lost Randy.
Oh, he may have dropped off.
I'm still here. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay.
Randy just dropped the mic and closed his camera.
No, I didn't do that. No.
So
Maybe
Randy, I think, can you still hear me?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple questions, and Randy, maybe you and Mike can address these. From a finance standpoint, with the grants, I know we've talked about this for quite some time at a couple of meetings to address Commissioner Kelly's questions, but we continue to come back to the same question. But there is a time limit on those grants. It's not like you have an option to say, I'll look at a grant later down the road. It might not be available, and it likely won't be available, especially with the reduced in funds across the state as a result of COVID. So, some of the questions are talking about the availability of those funds. What is the timing for using the grant, and how long would the project take to complete? Those are some of the questions that are coming up in the chat, even before we hit with some specific questions from the public. Maybe you could address those, Randy.
I sure can. This grant does have, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, I think 2022 is the end for this grant. Part of this is, though, it's been planned. It's been worked into our public works schedule. There is a significant amount of work we will be participating in down there. This project has been being planned for before I started with South Whitehall Township, since 2014. Again, I go back to the public input. I go back to all those public meetings way before we got to where we are today. There was a need for this back then, as well as parking improvements, which are also included in this project. So I guess I just don't want to turn back the clock here, and we're nearing the finish line. The finance is in place, the permit is in place. We've gone out to bid. We've done our homework. I can certainly say that. So for me, it would be kind of a disappointment to prolong this any longer. Coming out of a pandemic, I know residents, visitors are going to be looking for a quality facility to recreate at.
We do have a question, Randy, from one of the questions from Mr. Hodges is, can the grant be extended?
Yes,
I believe the answer is no. You can?
Yeah, you can file for extensions, but again, that's going to be harder to come by now. Like you mentioned, Commissioner Morgan, I'm not sure how what type of appetite DCNR is going to have to extend a grant application right now, and there are many viable projects throughout the Commonwealth that are fighting for these same dollars.
Yeah, that's the biggest concern, because we might not have the availability to have the grant moving forward if we try and do something like that.
So I'm sorry, just a follow-up, Randy. So the grant expires 2 years from now. So is that what you said? So
yeah, his question was in regards to an extension. The grant's typically good for 4 years. I believe we received this in 2018. DCNR does permit grant extensions, which was what his question was. So I don't think it would be prudent to drag this on past that deadline.
This is Commissioner Walk. I see Mr. Hodges has another question, but I also have a comment, but we can let Mr. Hodges go first.
Sure.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Wilk. It's basically along the same lines as what Commissioner Kelly was saying about the finances, but I think I'm just going to ask the question directly. How much will my taxes be increased to pay for this?
Zero.
Zero.
And that's a firm commitment from the board that my taxes will not be increased to pay for this.
Sir, this is money from a grant and from open space impact fees that when development occurs in the township, there's a requirement from that developer to pay the township specific monies that are earmarked for parks and recreation. So this isn't a general fund expenditure.
Randy, can you comment for us then? Obviously, I understand all of that, but you said that there'd be a significant amount of work being done by Public Works. So obviously that is a budgeted item. And when we're talking big picture, COVID impact, something to think about, because at the end of the year, when we look at our budget and monies have been spent, then we're left with, do we have enough to cover the rest of our expenses and leading into next year? And that's what I mentioned earlier. So I understand there's no dollar to dollar for the actual purchase of the playground, but the work that needs to be done. And also I'm understanding there's a parking lot that wasn't part of this bid that's obviously going to be needed. Is that going to be through open space funds?
Yes, that's work being performed by our public works staff as well. So the public works staff is going to be doing some of the excavation, demolition, and paving of the parking areas, as well as some of the landscaping too. So this bid that we have in front of us is strictly for the concrete work. And I just also want to hint too, the longer this goes on, if this goes, year after year, let's say we wait to 2022, I would expect these numbers to be inflated. It's going to cost more in a few years than it's costing today. The cost of the equipment will go up, the cost of the concrete will likely rise as well. And that's something to take into consideration here as we're making a decision on this project.
Well, I would agree with you, but if we were to wait till the spring when we're hopefully at a better place economically as far as our township funding, maybe we'll have a better handle on where we are as a township revenue-wise and expenditure-wise. That's not 2022, that would be spring of 21, and these numbers would still be, these bids would still be good. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct.
No. You'd have to re-advertise.
You'd have to re-advertise, go through all the motions here again. These bids, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, good for 60 days?
I believe so, yep, 60 days. It may have been 90, but I know it's not up until next spring.
Right.
Well, that's interesting, because I remember when we put at our meeting when we voted on putting this out to bid, I remember asking that question: would there be an open-ended time? There would be plenty of time that this bid would be good for. So I guess I'm confused.
No one said that would be good for 2 years.
No.
Or a year. I mean, you don't get these more than usually 60 to 90 days out. I mean, that's not, you just don't.
Okay.
And
Well,
I would expect that you're seeing probably lower prices now because these builders or concrete people probably, I mean, the environment is not as good for them right now. So you're probably catching actually a really good time on this type of stuff. So
one of the other questions, Randy and Mike, is, and I think this answers all the questions in the chat, I believe. If not, someone will have to raise their hand. How much money does the township have to float to match the grant? And I believe that's coming from the open space fund. So it's.
That's correct. Yep, that's correct. So.
And the other question I saw was how long would the project take to complete? And that would be just a few months down the road from start to finish. We'd hope to be done this fall.
Okay.
Right.
Commissioner Walk, you had a comment?
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Randy.
Yes.
Go ahead.
That's okay. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. My comments are the same as the last meeting. They align with Commissioner Kelly. So I support the project entirely. I question the timing. We don't know where we are exactly with regards to the pandemic. I did look back at our notes from the last time we discussed this subject, just so I was refreshed appropriately. So is May 6th. Randy gave his excellent explanation. We had a thorough discussion on finances. And Steve Carr made a comment that the amended budget would be available shortly. And Diane Kelly has commented on this a few different ways. I might be comfortable in approving this now if I had seen the amended budget due to the pandemic impact. I'd like to see that prior to voting yes on this.
All right. Are there any other questions from the public?
Hey, Tori, we're having problems with Matt's audio, I think.
Matt, do you want to? Yeah, I think he's, if you can't answer, maybe he can put his question in the chat too.
Let's see if we can get Matt. You're gonna call in? Okay.
All right. While Matt's calling in with his comments, is there anybody else from the public that had any questions? Lee Solt has a question, I believe. Lee?
Yeah, just Commissioner Morgan, commissioners, thank you for just Randy, just a quick clarification from a couple of questions that were here this evening. How much money of any of this money can get, if the concern is money to pay bills and for South Whitehall Township to operate, how much money of this could actually go back into the budget to help pay bills or do something like that if we didn't do this project?
Sure. So I'll touch on that a little bit, hopefully in more detail here. The grant is earmarked for this specific project. Open space impact fees are earmarked for parks and recreation projects. We also raised about $15,000 in sponsorships specific to this project. So we have a budget of about $610,000 right now. We are staying under. It is our goal to stay under that budget. That's where the money is earmarked to go. This isn't necessarily, you can't pull the grant money to fix potholes. You can pull open space money to pave a road. That's not what this money's for. It's specific to this project here.
Okay. So I guess from what I'm hearing is that none of this money can be put back into the general budget to pay anything for anything else that we might need as expenses. So the other question I have is, to Commissioner Kelly's point, is that yes, this is the pandemic right now that we're going through, and yes, a lot of people are going out doing things outside. If schools are going to start back again in late August, so our budgets that the contractors have are either 60 or 90 days. If we can confirm that they're 90 days, that gives us back until September. Is it possible to start the project in late August, which would not impact the summertime of anybody using the facility, which you said it wasn't, but use the project in the summer, start the project in late August with the bid still being committed to at this point in time, and then getting your 2 months done, you're done well before the winter hits where you have issues with weather issues. I mean, just a thought and an idea.
No, you're right. You hit the nail on the head. The concern with delaying this, into the fall for a start date, for example, is the weather, is the temperature. Some of the stuff, the concrete, for example, the asphalt, things like that need certain temperatures to cure. So we'd be really up against time, delaying this a little bit further in regards to, the paving schedule and temperatures here with concrete curing. Those are legitimate concerns. And, it's kind of why we targeted a summer install date. When we were planning this, for the past few years, it was always thought that the summertime would be the best time to install this project.
That's what I'm saying is you still have, if it's late July, if it's mid to late August, when schools are starting up again, colleges are starting earlier. I don't know what the high school is going to do, or the Parkland School District is going to do, but at least at that point, it's the kids are back at school doing their activities. Hopefully, in late August, early September, won't be as much use in the park. Therefore, start it in late August, and then you still have the weather because you've got August, September, and October to with good weather, hopefully to concrete the cure and that kind of stuff. Those are just my thoughts. Thank you.
Well, can I comment? I've been trying to chime in for a little while, and I just want to make a couple comments real quick. First of all, there was a comment made by Commissioner Kelly about, oh, well, there was people using the park. Well, if you dug a huge crater in the ground, people are going to play in it. It doesn't mean that it's suitable or a nice, thing for the township residents. Again, I've been there many times. The park is all of Cover Bridge Park is gorgeous. That playground there is nothing for our residents. Most of it's an eyesore. It's a very small area to play in. You can only have a few kids on that machinery at one time. And to go to Lee's point, delaying the project till the fall, first of all, you run into issues with the parking lot. You can't do asphalt, you can't do concrete in the winter, obviously. You have to keep in mind that just because we want the project done in August doesn't mean the contractor is going to be able to accommodate them. Us approving the bid now doesn't mean that the contractor is starting tomorrow. It means that as soon as their most recent project's done, they're going to get on it. But if we say, hey, we'll let you know in August, and Upper Macungie says, or Lower Macungie says, we want to build our master park, and we lose that bid, or we get pushed back into the winter, into spring, and we're behind schedule. Plus the fact that high school kids are not playing on the swing sets at Cover Bridge Park. This is mostly a toddler, 3, 4, 5, up till maybe 10 years old type of playground. So the idea that 13-year-old kids are going there to swing on swing sets, we're going to deprive them of this opportunity by tearing it down is not realistic. And there are other parks that they can utilize. Cover Bridge Park is not just one swing set or one playground that we're working on. There are creeks for them to walk through, hang out at the picnic tables, soccer fields. There's a lot to do there other than just that swing set. So we're not bulldozing the entire park. We are taking down a small designated area for smaller children to make it better. And keep in mind, too, that the bathrooms have already been torn down because we expected to build new bathrooms there. So there are no bathrooms at Cover Bridge Park. It's all taped off right now, still for COVID. We don't know when for certain we're going to be back into the green. So if people are using that park, part of that park is supposed to be closed down, from what I understand. So if people are using part of that park that last time I was there about 3 weeks ago was taped off to not be used, they really shouldn't have been using it at the beginning. So if anything, this is the best time to do it because we're going to have the least amount of downtime with use of that park while we're in the pandemic. But if we delay it, there's this presumption or this speculation from Commissioners Kelly and Walk that, well, we might be in a better financial position next year. Well, maybe we won't. Maybe we'll be in the same position. Maybe quite frankly, all I've heard is speculation about the financial position because Diane and Mike are on Finance Committee. I still don't have any idea where we stand as relative to this COVID crisis that they keep pounding the table about. So if we're in a financial crisis, then speak up. If we're not, then let's not speculate that there's going to be one because it's nothing but coming from a place of fear. And all I hear is fear of the unknown, fear of the future. Well, how about we give some hope that things are going to be good? Stock market's back to where it was pre-COVID. The government's moving, the state's opening back up again. There's been no plan from those commissioners who opposed this project to reduce taxes or to delay tax payments from beyond July for local taxes or to reduce EIT. So this concern about taxpayers is really just nothing but window dressing because the reality is the money's there already and no one's pushing forward a plan to reduce taxes if that's really their main concern. So the idea is we have a plan in place. It's been in place. The money's there. There's no reason other than fear and speculation that we don't even know is true about finances that may never come to play. Let's do the project now. The park is already shut down in part because of COVID. This is the best time to do it.
If I may,
Commissioner Wall.
can I say something? Can I say
Go ahead,
something?
Joe, and then I'll go after
Can we,
Joe
wait,
Stetton.
hold on. Let Commissioner Stetton talk, please. He hasn't had a chance to speak. Go ahead,
Thank-
Commissioner Stetton.
Thank you. I appreciate. I wasn't sure whether I can be heard or not, but I think the playground, the new playground, is going to be a huge relief to the children of our community. They need it. They need it now. They need it during the pandemic. That is the joy and the relief that they will have during this hard time. I don't think postponing it is going to be would do any good. And I think the money that will be spent on it is very good money being spent.
Thanks, Joe.
I-
Are there,
I-
okay, Commissioner
I would
Walk,
just
and
like
then let's hit the public on this one and move forward. Commissioner Walk?
Yeah, I just like to clarify a point. All I said before, I'm not fearful about the finances. I was simply highlighting that work has been done. Our finance manager said it was ready for presentation. We simply haven't seen it yet. So rather than make a decision without that information, I simply advocate that we receive the information and then make the decision. And that some time has passed, at least a month, maybe 6 weeks have passed since some of that work was finalized. So I knew what it was 6 weeks ago. I'm personally out of date right now, and I'd just like to see where we stand right now before casting this vote. That's what I said before, and I hope that clarifies what I meant.
Very, very good. Thank you, Commissioner Walk. Are there any other questions from the public?
Tori, can I make a comment?
Okay. You certainly can, Steve.
Just to address Mike's question, one of the reasons we haven't brought it is because the financials actually have been coming in a little better than we thought they were when we took that initial look. And obviously, anytime if it's we have a plan that we're working off of that reduces what we think would kind of the maximum issue would be with revenue. We've actually gotten some news probably that won't be as bad as it is, and I will share that with them when we meet this month at the Finance Committee meeting. But I just don't feel, if it was getting worse, I would have brought something faster. But obviously every day that I get more information, I can make better decisions on it and advise you guys. Like this project, I don't have, from a finance perspective, I don't have any reservations doing this project. This project is not going to be the thing that would cause a tax increase for our residents. Like this is, from a cost perspective, it's so far down the line of things that would hit us. And it really is not costing us a ton of money. So that's where I am on from a staff perspective. From my perspective, it's a no-brainer, and we get this thing done, and then we have resources in the future, people-wise, and other things to deal with other potential issues down the line. Like it may be something different a year from now, 2 years from now, whatever, but I can tell you that these prices are not going to be lower 2 years from now, and we're going to be talking about using other funds to try to pull this off. So that's my financial line on that.
Thank you, Steve. I think in light of, this is just my view on this, in light of the discussion that we've had numerous times on the grant, the availability of the grant, the work that's gone into getting that grant, the grant funding or matching rather, coming from the Open Space Fund, also the donations we've received, the financial impact, which is like we had heard, is little to nothing on the residents of the township. I believe I would like to make a motion that we move forward to award the bid for the Covered Bridge Park concrete project to get this project underway. I think it's going to be a huge asset to our community, and I fully support it.
I'll second that.
So we do have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Morgan and a second from, I believe, Commissioner Stetton. Assuming there's no other comments or thoughts, we would do a roll call vote at this point.
Commissioner Walk,
With great admiration for Randy Copes and Mike Kukitz, I vote no.
Commissioner Mobilio,
With great admiration, I vote yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
No, I'm sorry, at this time, I would have voted to defer this to the time when our budget is in a better situation. So unfortunately, no, I do support the work that you've done, Ms. Randy.
Commissioner Stetton,
Yes, and as soon as possible, please.
and Commissioner Morgan.
Yes, from me. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody, for the hard work you've put into this. This is the start of something great. So looking forward to hearing more about it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Next on the agenda, don't go away. We have a motion requesting permission to proceed with the purchase of the playground equipment for Covered Bridge Park, assuming some of the questions and comments will be very similar to what we just had. So Randy and Mike, I'll let you present on this, and then we'll open it up for comments.
Correct. Thank you, Commissioner Morgan. Obviously, the same project here. This is kind of step two to get us moving forward here, but staff is seeking permission to purchase the necessary play equipment to complete the Covered Bridge Park playground. We've worked very closely with the Parks and Recreation Board over the past few months and 3 different playground suppliers to generate a design that was both appealing to children ages 2 to 12 and within our approved budget for the project. Staff is recommending to proceed with purchasing the playground equipment from Playworld Systems and George Ely and Associates through CoStars for a total cost of $407,096. The total cost includes installation of this equipment, and the equipment would be delivered within 4 to 6 weeks.
Randy, costs and funding all part of the same financial information you provided in the previous presentation?
That's correct, President Morgan. Same pot of money. It's right there along with the concrete work.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments for Mike or Randy on this motion for consideration this evening from the board?
Randy, is the concrete work going to be done before the equipment comes in, or
What's the
time? What's the time spent from the time the concrete is done until
right, we've got our permanent hand, which was obviously that's the longest process, but obviously with the board approval here, getting coordination with our concrete contractor, sorry, that's a tongue twister, and having our PA1 call contractor meeting on the site, we're targeting probably early to mid-July start date for this project. And that's ambitious. That's moving quickly as we hope to intend to. So what we would end up doing first is the demolition. We'd start excavation, and then the concrete contractor, got it right that time, will come in. They'll lay the concrete, get everything up to speed. Happening simultaneously may be the installation of the playground equipment. Once that's all said and done, we'll get the playground mulch down and finish up the landscaping. Pave the new driveway entrance with parking lot and trail that connects Vermil to the parking lot or to the playground.
So we're talking days between the time that the concrete work is completed until the equipment is actually installed.
Yeah, I'd say that's accurate. Yep.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the board?
I do have a question. Randy, you mentioned the
Sure.
mulch, rubberized mulch and pavement driveway. What is the cost for those? That's going to be township staff doing that. So
That's correct. It's not rubberized mulch, Commissioner Kelly. It is just a certified playground wood mulch. So it's not the rubber mulch. It's not a port and plate surface. I can tell you in 1 second, cost for mulch, we're projecting, and this is under state contract 2, I believe here, playground areas engineered. We're looking at 691 cubic yards of mulch at $23 a cubic yard, so just under $16,000 for the mulch.
I mean, a
And
total number from our budget for all of this extra work. First of all, with the concrete, for that, we didn't get a number for that, the excavation and all the public works that, and then for this as well. So we have an idea of what we're looking at.
Oh, okay. I think I follow you here. I can certainly run through the very, very detailed budget if you'd like. So the asphalt trail and crossing, we've actually got sponsorship dollars specific to that. That's coming in right around 5,000. The parking lot's coming in right around 22,000. We've discussed the sidewalks, that's at 103,000. Our playground areas with the sub-base 4-inch depth and the engineered fiber mulch, including the equipment and installation, we're at 426. We've got some necessary pavement markings and signage, obviously stop signs, playground signs, things of that nature, looking at about $2,000. Part of our requirement for our permit are E&S controls, or erosion and sedimentation controls. It's coming in around $16,000. Those are things like your concrete washout, your rock construction entry, your mulch, your straw mulch that goes over top of the seating, our silt sock, things like that. That's all required as part of our permit. That's coming in right around 16,000. And then we've also got some rain gardens and plantings that are also part of this permit requirement that are coming in right around 19,000. We've also got a stakeout of that area, so we make sure we're excavating in the proper location. That's coming in right around $3,100. So right now our budget looks to be about right around $598,000. So we've got about a $10,000 or $15,000 contingency built in.
Right, so all those numbers that you just gave are coming out of the open space and grant money.
That's correct.
Okay, but my question was, so the paving of the driveways and all that is covered under grant money?
That's correct. This whole, yep, the entire project. Yep, you're right.
So there'll be absolutely zero township dollars spent with this?
Yeah,
there'll be investment of some payroll time, Randy. I mean, that's the cost. Probably some gas for our equipment, and
yeah,
it's minimal. They're going to be doing something, those guys.
Right. I mean, these are the hard costs, the material costs, things like that. I wouldn't say labor's included into this on our own staff, but that's already budgeted money. You know, our staff's going to be working one way or the other, and obviously with contracts, they're going to be making more money next year, and it's going to cost us more money next year too.
And we've been working closely with Herb as far as, you know, making sure that we'll be able to maintain all the parks and all the other maintenance you know, to coincide with getting this work done, and we feel confident that we'll be able to do that.
That's a great point, Mike. I think that's important to touch on too. Herb's guys have done a tremendous job getting way out ahead of our routine maintenance in our parks this year. I got to say that they look beautiful. All of our courts have been pressure washed. Our existing swing sets and other amenities at playgrounds throughout the township have been painted. We've got trees that have gone in, all things that, you know, are low impact, low cost. Some of the materials already in-house. They've been doing a tremendous job, you know, getting these parks looking very well maintained. So I feel very good where our park system currently is in regards to routine maintenance.
I would also add that I think these are some of the projects that our public works staff enjoy working on. To see these projects, this is what they enjoy, this is what they like doing as well.
There's some personal
Steve.
pride in that.
Steve, Matt Mobilio, real quick. Every single meeting that we have that Tony and Joe Zader are present for, we're paying them by the hour. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. So every single minute that we spend belaboring points that have been argued and debated time and time and time again, we're actually paying our engineer and our attorney to listen to. Is that right?
Correct.
All right. So as we sit here and we debate an issue that was already advertised 2-3 meetings ago, voted on and approved, and we sit here and we argue about $300 for this and gas for the vehicles. At the end of the day, we're going to end up paying our solicitor and our township engineer more money than whatever could feasibly have possibly be saved by delaying this project. That's not a question, that's my opinion. So just for the public's edification, everyone that's on this call realize that every minute we spend here, when people get up on their soapbox and complain about things, it's costing the taxpayers money. To speculate about costing the taxpayers money on something else.
As a follow-up to that, Mobilio, we are all elected officials at large and represent our constituents, and we are allowed at each meeting to give our own opinions on a project, whether or not we agree on them. I'm not here to debate. I give my opinions on a particular project. So I'm sorry if you don't agree with my opinion tonight. I didn't ask you to debate it with me. I'm simply stating my concerns as a member of the Finance Committee and as a commissioner. So I'm sorry if you don't agree with me now, but thank you for your comment.
I'm expressing my concerns about spending taxpayer dollars on professionals to sit here and listen to us debate things to death, whatever we've been decided. So we're
right. That being said, whoa, enough. That being said, are there any other comments specific to this project? Let's move to the public. Anything from the public? If there's nothing from the public, we've had enough question and comments from the board. I think everybody knows everybody's position. Is there a motion on the floor to move forward with requesting to proceed with the purchase of the playground equipment?
I'll make the motion.
Someone like to? We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Seton. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Mobilio. Can I have a roll call vote, please, Renee?
Commissioner Walk,
No.
Commissioner Mobilio,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
No.
Commissioner Seton,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you again, everybody, for your hard work on this, gathering all the information for this project. Looking forward to great things moving forward. And thank you, board, for your very passionate comments. All right, moving along. We have for consideration this evening a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of South Whitehall Township authorizing the execution of a trail easement agreement with Stanley C. Breininger, Jeffrey G. Breininger, and Melody L. Luther, providing for the granting of a perpetual trail easement over lands of Stanley C. Breininger, Jeffrey G. Breininger, and Melody L. Luther along the Jordan Creek, and further providing for the payment of consideration therefore. Renee or Joe, I'm not sure who, or Mike, I'm not sure who's presenting on this one this evening. I'll pass it along.
We're actually going to go to Randy, is going to kind of give a bit of a detail on this.
Great.
Sure.
Great, thanks, Randy.
So some more Parks and Rec stuff for you. So this is another project we've been working diligently on for, a good year or so, if not more. This is in support of the Jordan Creek Greenway. This is an essential part of getting this project moving forward as well. You're aware that we do have another DCNR grant for design and permitting of the trail from Ware Mill Road, where it currently starts by the boardwalk, all the way up to Cedar Crest Boulevard. Easements will be required from a few different landowners, this being the first one that we are nearing completion with. So that's why it's on tonight's agenda. This will permit the township to install a 10-foot wide paved trail along the Jordan Creek through the Breininger property. with buffer planting on each side in cooperation with the landowners' wishes. They have requested a compensation of $6,000 for this easement in return to install a trail in perpetuity for all township residents, visitors, anybody on the greenway to access that trail through their property. So very, very standard easement document, nothing out of the ordinary on this, but certainly something that would need board approval for to proceed with the necessary route termination to the Jordan Creek Greenway.
Thanks, Randy. Are there any questions or comments from the board on this particular resolution?
I would like to add as well that this is being proposed to take out of the open space fund as well. I should have mentioned that. I apologize.
But
Thanks, Randy.
Thanks. 6,000. Randy, it's 6,000 total, right?
That's correct.
Randy, where are we with the DCNR? I couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Kelly, you were breaking up there. I apologize.
I couldn't hear I heard you say about the DCNR grant. Did you have an update on that?
So we have received the bids. We're working with DCNR right now to figure out how we're going to award that here. That's likely coming to the board at the July 1st meeting, I think it is. So we're working right now, trying to get all this together as well. Obviously, the playground was, that was one thing that we were, really focusing on these past few weeks. The greenways coming to you guys here next meeting. But it's been put out to bid. We've received, Mike, 8 proposals, 6.
Proposals for the engineering, you're saying?
That's correct. The engineering, which would include permitting and design. So we'll go through the park and then up to Cedar Crest.
And you said we did get the DCNR grant. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
That is correct. We have received that money.
And what amount were we given on that grant?
That was a $150,000 grant.
Thank you. And is that a matching fund grant?
Yes, it is. 50%. And that's in this year's budget as well, under Parks and Rec Capital.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Are there any other questions or comments from the board before we answer any questions from the public? Okay, any questions from the public on this particular topic? All right, that being said, do I hear a motion to move forward with the resolution for the execution of the trail easement with the Breiningers and Luther?
I make a motion.
Go ahead. Was that Commissioner Walk?
Well, and I'll second it.
We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Walk, and we have a second from Commissioner Kelly. Can I have a roll call vote, please, Renee?
Commissioner Walk.
Yes.
Commissioner Mobilio.
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly.
Aye.
Commissioner Seton.
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan.
Aye. Motion carries. Great. Thank you very much, everybody who worked on this. Another good step in moving forward with the trail program. Excellent.
Thank you.
All right. You got it, Randy. Moving right along, under correspondence and information items, I'd just like to note we have a public notice of our Planning Commission meeting on Thursday, June 18th at 7 p.m. Mr. Kinney, did you want to add anything to this?
Not much to add, Commissioners. Just one item for tomorrow night. I did want to take a brief second, since I have your attention at the moment, and just let you know that the outdoor dining legislation is going very well. We've had 3 restaurants come in and secure approval through that process already, and it's going very well.
Excellent.
Great. Thank you for your support.
That's great. That's great. Any questions or comments for George?
I just had a question on the outdoor dining. I know that we were going to hand deliver those to the restaurants. Has that been taken care of yet, or is that in process?
We did. Our code enforcement officers actually, they pulled a listing from the state. I think we served 156 different businesses with the notice. And like I said, the response has been good, and we've been turning around pretty much within a 24-hour period just to get them, get these folks up and running. So it's going really well. Thanks, Commissioner.
Beautiful.
I will also say that the restaurants have been very appreciative of the process. We've received good feedback from them, so.
Thank you, Steph. Appreciate that.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. That's fantastic. All right. Any other questions, comments? I'm not seeing any in the chat either. All right. Chief, what do you got for us under statistics this evening?
Good evening, Commissioners. To go over May's stats, we handled 805 reports for the month. 74 of those were self-initiated, compared to 1,131 last year in the month of May, which is 326 lower this year than last year. The biggest call for service is EMS calls, as typical. We handle 194 of those this month. Our uniform crime reports are down considerably compared to last year. We only had 65 crimes reported versus 121 last year, so we're 56 lower. The number of arrests is 31 in comparison to 48. It is getting busier on the road again. Some DUIs and things, some drug activity going on. So that's picking up a little bit, but we're still down 17 arrests compared to last year at this time. The self-initiated is 25.8%, and the arrest ratio from UCR to arrest is about 48% almost. So the officers are out there doing a great job. They're still facing with a lot of things going on across the nation with the COVID pandemic still going on. So they're out there doing a great job every single day, and we appreciate what they do.
As do we, Chief, as do we. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments for Chief tonight? All right. Tony, what do you have for us this evening from an engineering standpoint?
Thank you. We have a couple movers on the list. We had Hotel Hamilton and Parkland Manor move to the second sheet, which means, as you know, they've been approved. They're working on cleaning up. And we have the Dollar General and Blue Barn 3 going to construction. So again, a couple movers to each sheet. Besides that, pretty consistent work throughout the township we have.
Great. Good to hear. Thanks, Tony. Any questions or comments for Tony this evening?
Thank you, Commissioner.
All right. So we have nothing under direction and discussion. However, I'd like to note that our Green Advisory Committee met this week. We had a fantastic meeting. I'm going to kind of hand it over to Mike and Randy to give a real quick brief on that. But we had advanced disposal at that meeting. They gave a little presentation on recycling, which was very enlightening, that of which we're going to share a lot of that information back out with the public with some informational materials that we're going to develop through the GAC committee and share on the website and through other informational outlets. But Randy or Mike, do you guys want to give a real brief on the meeting on the topics that we discussed, and we'll share more with documentation as it comes out?
I'll turn that one over to Mike. Mike, if you want to go ahead.
Sure, yeah, no, this is a newly formed council in the township, and I'm very excited to be a part of it. We have a lot of great minds on this committee, and really they're dedicated to how we can improve the township environmentally. You know, what can we do as residents to make the township a better place? And the biggest thing we touched on was having advanced disposal, on and just learning a lot about the recycling program, what actually makes it, what you put in your bins actually is recycled, it isn't recycled, and learning about things, that we can do moving forward to help them and help the township as that was the majority of the meeting, and that discussion will be continued at the next meeting. So I encourage you to join us there. Hopefully in person, probably still virtual, but Yeah, no, it's a fantastic committee and a lot of great things happening.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. We'll have much more to come from that group. We just wanted to share a little bit about the initial discussions. We also had our the voting in of officers at that meeting, so to formalize the group. And we'll be putting out some information and some bios on all those individuals to share more information with the public on where we stand. So just wanted to give you a little brief and hoping to come back with some informational packets or presentations for the public sometime here in the near future. Is there anybody else for direction and discussion items this evening? All right, we're going to move right into old business. Renee, did you have anything to update on with Ware Stamp?
No, we don't. We still the same status. Permit is pending with DEP, so I do not believe, I still anticipate it being several months.
I'm compelled to say something about the Weirs Dam. We had, if I may, on May 13th, we had a meeting and we approved the release of a savings account for the Weirs Dam. That's all we did. We released the savings account that might be redirected to other uses because of the COVID-19. Following that, the Morning Call had an article that implemented that the faith of the Weirs Dam was kind of made by the fact that the funds are going to be redirected. So I just wanted to make it clear that I don't believe that the faith of the Weirs Dam has been made, and also I would think that the Weirs Dam, being a historical site, it actually should be called the historic Weirs Dam. Should we at the same meeting, we went ahead and approved a development on Hamilton and Cedar Crest Boulevard, the Hotel Hamilton, and in that approval, we actually requested from the developer to save a historic building, the King George Inn. And I think that the township should lead by example. That's all I have to say.
Well, Commissioner Sutton, I'd like to follow up on that. Actually, I was going to ask a question tonight about the same thing. I believe for the King George Inn that South Whitehall did establish some sort of a historic district, historic zoning. So my question, I guess, is do we have any type of a historic preservation mechanism in South Whitehall? And if we don't, how do we go about talking about getting one to preserve areas like that, or even other structures throughout the township that we don't want to see go the way of the wrecking crane that we may want to preserve for historical reasons? Is there something in our township already for that?
I don't know that there is, but I think it's a good idea. We do want to preserve historic monuments in the township, like every other place.
So
I will tell you this. Can I just share with you just some past information on the historic part of Ware Dam? Actually, we had done a lot of research, and correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just trying to remember back to some of the meetings. Not that the Ware Dam isn't something that's very special to many people in the township, but the historic part was actually the mill house that was there. That was the thing that was considered the historic, or what could be on the historic register, which isn't there anymore. The dam itself, I'm not sure if that's registered as a historic site. Not that doesn't mean it's not an area that could be considered for our own preservation, but I just wanted to mention that I mean, Randy or Renee, you guys might remember those discussions, but I remember having many. Was it actually on the historic register? And I don't, I'm not sure if that's what you guys are touching on or not.
Just to pop in, I believe, yes, the mill, I think, was the historic part. I think we would need to see if you can designate a dam as historic. Joe Zader may have some more insight onto that, but I don't believe it's that what the program that was put in place, similar to the Hotel Hamilton, didn't identify necessarily the dam. So
that would be correct, Renee. The ordinance that was put in place in connection with the Hotel Hamilton project to preserve the King George Inn, it is an ordinance that has widespread applicability beyond the King George, but it's really an ordinance that was established as an incentive to encourage developers to preserve historic structures on properties that otherwise would have been developed. So by its very nature, I suspect that if we were to look at the ordinance, we would probably determine it does not apply to the Weirs Dam context. And because it was really an ordinance established to be a carrot, an encouragement to preserve historic structures identified by the township on developable lands, it's an independent mechanism entirely from the historic registration process that was alluded to earlier. That's a process that involves applying to the federal government to establish it being a preserved facility on the register.
So is this something that, I know I've done a little bit of digging around since that meeting, and I saw that there is the National Dam Rehabilitation Program where there's some grant money available, because there was some concern about maintenance or long-term costs for that dam. Is this something that we as a board should maybe schedule a workshop for next month? And this full, we have 4 new members on this board that can be brought up to speed to what's happened in the past with this, and we can start talking about options for the future while we're waiting for the DEP approval to come in.
Yeah, this is Mike Walk. I was sort of thinking the same thing, but I wanted to go back a step. We don't all have the history. I've acquired some history, by talking to different people like Wildlands. Last meeting we had, or 2 meetings ago, we had the discussion about releasing the funds, and people were just volunteering person by person by person what they knew. The current status, we turn to Renee once a month, about what's the situation with DEP. Anyway, my thought about a workshop is, can we just get like all the fundamental information out in front of everybody, like educate us so we all have the same information, and then we could talk about, what future direction ahead. That's just an idea.
Well, I think that the township should cherish historic sites, whether they're registered or not. Clearly, if they're registered, but if they're not, they're still historic sites that should be preserved.
Any thoughts about a workshop? Yes or no, other commissioners?
I think that would be a great idea.
In that vein, Mike, I'm just curious because I don't know the answer to this. What does the effect of designating it as a historic site or enacting an ordinance to designate it as a historic site, what effect does that have to do with the obligation of the township to support it financially, or support repairs or maintenance or whatever financially into the future?
That would be a good question for the workshop.
I mean, does anyone know the question? I mean, I'm all for the workshop. I'm just curious if anyone knows the answer to that now. I mean, or the King George Inn's not, obviously, it's not going to cost us anything for it to be historical. Developers on the hook for that, I presume. But the dam is not part of any kind of development. So if it's deemed historical, is that going to tie our hands in the future where we have no choice but to
pay for repairs because of its historical nature.
Well, I think that would be an opportunity to discuss that at a workshop, and I could certainly get more information on the National Dam Rehabilitation Program, which is to assist local communities to rehabilitate, repair, or remove high hazard potential dams before they fail. It allows communities to make a preemptive investment into aging infrastructure, and in the process, make the communities below the dam safe. So, I mean, there's money out there. There's $10 million in 2018, and it went as high as 60 million for fiscal years 2021 through 26. So there's a lot of money out there. I think it's certainly something that we as the board could discuss and see what we want to do moving forward.
I mean,
Sure,
I'm certainly in favor of it, but I just, at the same time, I'm not, I mean, we just got through a debate about whether it makes sense to tie our hands financially for the park. So I just want to go on record as saying that I will participate in a workshop. I'm happy to talk about it, but under no circumstances will I vote in favor of any ordinance or process that would require the township to inject any additional funds into the dam, other than what's already been voted on via the referendum several years ago.
Just to clarify, and we've discussed this at numerous public meetings in the past, the dam is on a 5-year plan, and we're still into that plan, and we're in the permitting process of that plan until we see if they issue a permit or deny a permit. I mean, again, our plan has been the 5-year plan to rehabilitate the dam, and we're still in that process. But part of that is DEP approving or not approving our permit, and then that will gear the financial impact of to the township once they determine. I mean, our engineer has been working on that, submitted that permit. So this has been actively worked on for quite some time. It's just, again, the permitting process with DEP is a process, and until we know if that permit's approved or not, we won't know the absolute financial impact.
Yeah. Renee, forgive me if you've already said this at previous meetings. What is the time frame with DEP? Is there a definite time frame or not?
DEP is a 12 to 18 month permit process.
So I missed what you said.
12 to 18 months, and it was submitted, I want to say, in November, December, the permit. So we're not even 12 months into the permit process.
Okay.
And they usually take their time up until the very end.
And they were not working through the pandemic. They were not working on them through the pandemic.
So we still have about a year before we get an answer, probably.
Certainly, if I may, certainly if the board, I think it makes sense to share, historical discussions that we've had regarding the dam, all that kind of information to bring the board up to speed. That certainly can be a workshop meeting to share the information we've gathered so far to date and what brought us to the 5-year plan, all those different things. So, a workshop in that vein makes sense. I think any decisions on, ordinance changes or actions, I think we would probably want to wait until after the permit came in so we kind of know what direction we're taking. But the discussion prior to that, a workshop to kind of bring all of you up to speed with prior discussions regarding the dam, that makes sense. And certainly I would support that as well, just to get all that information out in the same place. Instead of having people gathering their own information and only getting bits and pieces of it, because that doesn't really give you a clear picture. So Renee, maybe what we could do is think about, in the next, month or so, there's a lot of things on our plate right now, but maybe within the next month or so, because we're certainly not going to see something happen with the permit in the next month or so, but we could consider having a workshop just to go over the information gathered to date. That might help the board know where we stand and how we got to where we are right now.
Okay. The other thing I would also say, if we talk about a historic component, maybe that can be something that is included with the comp plan and looked at through the comp plan process.
True.
Everything that President Morgan said, Renee Bickle said, Matt said, it's all synergistic. A synergistic workshop on the history, I'm very much in favor of that. For all our benefits.
All right.
There's a question from the public, from Ray Salt, whether the workshop will be open to the public or not.
Yes.
I guess
All of our workshops are open. Yep, absolutely, Lee. Absolutely.
We
So more to come on that. We might have to think of a date that works. There's a lot of things going on, but Renee, you can try and see how that works into the schedule.
Yeah, and I'm thinking maybe not next month, but maybe hopefully if we could get into an in-person meeting, it might be easier to see some of the things in person.
Yep, agreed. Something like August.
Along that line, Renee, do we have an idea when we can begin to have in-person meetings? We're dealing with the school system, use their administration building.
Well, they originally told us, they didn't give us a time frame. We are exploring some other location options. But I'm hopeful that perhaps at the end of July or beginning of August, that maybe we could be in person.
Okay.
And if they're still limited, we will have to still, if they're limited in the number of people in person by orders of we can, we would have to potentially limit the number in person, but also simultaneously, stream it as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Thank you for the update.
All right. So moving on to more to come on Where's Sam in a future meeting. So moving on to campus renovation project. Renee, did you and Steve, did you guys have anything you wanted to add or update on that one?
Did we lose somebody? I don't hear anybody.
Renee or Steve? Renee's on mute.
Yep. Sorry
Steve,
about that. I was muted also.
That's okay.
Sorry. I can
Anything
hear
you want to
myself
add,
speak
Steve?
perfectly.
Oh, Renee just texted that she's frozen, can't connect.
Yep. I will give it.
Steve.
Yeah, I'll give it the quick and dirty update. I know Renee was going to do this, but if anybody's driven by, you guys can see there's a lot of construction and dirt moving and stuff right now going on. Timeline, they're still kind of on the original timeline, the pre-COVID timeline where we gained a bunch of time and then lost it back to COVID. So we're still kind of on that. They are running into some issues with some soils and stuff that we're working through, but hasn't taken us out of a timeline and a cost perspective. It has not gone outside of the budget. So kind of find what you find, but we plan on contingencies. So I don't know. I haven't been out there in the last couple of days. I've actually been out sick the last few days. So Renee or Randy, I think, have been out there, so they would have a better idea of what was going on lately.
Sorry, I'm back.
Hey, Renee.
Okay.
Sorry,
Steve was just giving us a brief update on the campus renovation. If there's anything you wanted to add.
Yeah, I'm moving along. Again, our issue now is with some of the soils and the site work, but I think we have identified solutions for that and can move forward.
Excellent.
And again, we're still into, from a financial perspective, we are still in line with, again, we haven't exhausted any of our contingencies or allowances, so we are still in the original financial budget.
I will pass those along to the board as we receive them from Boyle. I've not gotten this month's update yet, so I will pass that along to you guys when I get it.
Yeah, I believe
Thanks,
they
thanks.
most recent bills in, so they'll be generating them.
Excellent.
Okay. Yeah, my question was going to be, last month, our expenditure to date was like 1.1 million. You don't have a further update for this month yet?
No, they just billed May, Mike. So they billed May and then they will update them, the reports, once the May invoices have been put in.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Steve, do you want to continue with credit cards, a status on credit cards? Did you have anything new to update on that one?
Still aiming and working toward the 30th of this month. So I hope I'm bringing you good news that we're accepting credit cards at the next meeting.
Awesome. Awesome. Great. Thank you. All right. Any questions or comments for Steve or Renee? All right. Now is the opportunity for courtesy of the floor. This is the opportunity for anybody to address the board on a non-agenda item. I do believe we had a few individuals that had requested courtesy of the floor. And Steve, I will let you introduce those individuals based on their request.
All right, I did receive a couple before the meeting, so I will kick it off. I believe Joe Buba is here and Mark Bonnick, I believe, if you guys want to start off.
Sure. Thank you. Good to see everybody again. Long time. And Mr. Jaffer's also available. Mark and I can talk and answer any questions. Do the commissioners have any background on the issue regarding the impervious coverage requirements in the zoning ordinance, or would you like me to go over that and place this in some context?
Go ahead, Joe. Place it in some context. I think that would be helpful.
Okay. Section 350.44 of the zoning ordinance addresses impervious coverage requirements for residential lots. I'm not sure if anything was handed out to you, but just generally speaking, it's a graduated table. So, for example, lots from 0 to 5,000 square feet are permitted 100% lot coverage. And then it goes down to 75, 65, 50, 25, and 15 as the lots get larger. And that makes sense, except when applied to a certain group of circumstances. If you do not have the chart in front of you.
Hey Joe, just sorry to interrupt. I do have a couple attachments that were emailed to me.
Yes.
Passed on to me. Do you want me to bring any of those up for you?
Sure. Yes, you could bring.
Is this what you're looking at?
No, go back one, please. That's it. Yes. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
Okay. You just tell me what you need moved around. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So at the top of that sheet in front of you, it shows what I just said. That is, on the left side, it shows lots from 0 to 5,000 all the way down to 217,000 square feet, 800 acres, which is 5 acres plus. If you could just move that down, move it up a bit, if it's not all showing. What you see in the box to the right is an anomaly. So, for example, lots up to 5 acres on the box, the lot size can be 217,800 square feet. And because that's a 25% lot coverage, you see the impervious allowed is 54,450. Does everybody see that in the box? Well, the interesting thing is, as soon as you go 1 square foot larger than 5 acres, 217,801 feet, because the impervious allowed is 15% for 5+ acres, you're actually permitted a smaller lot coverage, 32,670. And so to make this simple, and while there are other exhibits, to make this simple, the best fix of this seems to be that you would apply the graduated table very much like the tax code. So for example, up to 5,000 square feet, you'd be permitted 100. But then when you get over 5,000 square feet, every foot over 5,000, you're permitted 75. Every foot over 25,000, you're permitted 65%, just the way your taxes are paid, right? Graduated models. And so the benefit of that is if you look in the shaded box, that will demonstrate the anomaly. In the shaded box in the middle of the page, 5 acres, 217,800 square feet with a 25% impervious allows 54,450. But a 6.54 acre tract, which is actually what my client has, because of the 15%, if you don't do the graduated, only allows 42,725. And you'd have to go all the way up to 8.33 acres for someone to get the same impervious coverage. But if you do the marginal rates, just like the marginal tax bracket, that's what's shown below. So that just takes the percentages, the one in blue, marginal impervious coverage, that takes the percentages and it demonstrates on a 6.54 acre tract, an 81,000 square feet of impervious would be permitted. So I believe staff supports this proposal. It effectively fixes something that is in the zoning ordinance right now. I think it would be subject to challenge otherwise, because lots that end up being smaller, lots that end up being larger, sometimes significantly larger, have less impervious coverage permitted than a smaller lot. So I can go into detail and use the other exhibits, but maybe I can let the township staff chime in. And Mark Bonick is the engineer. He's also here. Maybe Mark, if you want to say a couple words on your last exhibit, that might be helpful from an illustrative perspective.
Certainly, if I could just ask the staff to move to that last exhibit, I would appreciate that.
Is this the one you're looking at, Mark? That or in that same file?
Yeah, that's correct.
It's that one right there. Okay. So the parcel in question this evening is a 6.5 acre parcel, and the applicant is trying to build one single family house on this property, and that doesn't work based on the by range ordinance application. It does work though based on the marginal tax concept that Joe discussed. The other thing that's kind of strange about the ordinance is that you're allowed to have a lot more impervious with smaller lots. So on this single property that we're hoping to build a single house on, the other option that the applicant would have per the ordinance is not to build one house, but in fact to build 8 houses and put a cul-de-sac in and build 8 houses on this one property. That would be by code based on the current ordinance.
And if you would do this, you would end up with half the property being developed and impervious versus about 28% if you build a single family house on the property. So just one more example of how the current range application of the ordinance kind of moves people to make decisions that may not be in the best interest of the public.
And so just let me chime in. While we're showing you this as an example that impacts our particular client, we're not asking this board to approve anything related to this one individual client. We're just asking this board to move ahead with a modification to the zoning ordinance to fix the concept, and then we would proceed without even needing any type of zoning.
Thank you, Attorney Buba. So did you, when you said staff had a chance, George, did you look at this in your department and mull over this as well, the concept?
So just to provide a little bit more of a background, this applicant was before the zoning hearing board last week. And so they were asking for a variance from impervious surface coverage. The board chose not to approve that, but I think suggested to the applicant that they consider approaching the board for a text modification to accommodate what they were looking for. Staff, we're neutral in this. We're not saying we support or we don't support. You know, we haven't really looked at it in depth, but we do have. I know Greg over the years has been looking at ways to modify the impervious coverage requirements, and he does have some options for consideration if the board thinks that it's appropriate to send it back down to the planning commission for further consideration.
Thank you, George. I can certainly see I can see where Attorney Buba's point is. You know, when you're looking at the lot and there's like 8 houses, you know, it's not an issue. But if it's, you know, somebody owns all of that and wants to put one house, then it becomes an issue. So procedurally, it would be, is it correct in saying that if this were something that we were looking at an ordinance modification for the whole concept, that would go to planning and then have to come back to the BOC? Is that procedurally how we would approach this?
Correct, Commissioner. It's very similar to the PSACO ordinance that you just heard. So they are, in essence, asking for a text modification. If you think that it is reasonable for us to take a look at that, then you would, I think you do just that. You would suggest that it be remanded back to the planning commission for consideration, and then it would be brought back up to the board, very much like the PSACO request that you heard last time.
Okay. So that, and that makes sense.
Can we comment? Go ahead, Mike. You can go first, Matt.
All right. You know, the concept is sound as far as the, you know, marginal tax rate issue. I mean, that makes sense. My concern with this is what's being asked of us is a citizen with, you know, representation who's asking for the township to utilize its own resources and efforts to modify a zoning ordinance, basically to benefit one person. Not to say they won't benefit others, but the reality is that there are going to be very few individuals in the entire township that are going to benefit from this type of an ordinance. I mean, ordinance change. I mean, the scope, the size of these lots that we're talking about is so, you know, massive that, you know, essentially we'd be utilizing township resources to benefit a very small handful of people who, quite frankly, are very wealthy to be able to afford this sort of thing. So I have concern about the optics of us bending over backwards to modify ordinances to benefit a very small portion of the public.
Mr. Mobilia, can I respond, please? Yeah.
Sure.
Mr. Mobilia, under the municipality's planning code, there's two ways to present amendments to a zoning ordinance. The municipality can, on its own, make a request to modify its own ordinance, or a landowner can make a request. We are more than happy presenting this exact same model to the Planning Commission so that the township is not using its time and resources on this modification. It's so in effect, what we're really saying is if the township doesn't want to mend this broken fence on its own, perhaps because of some of the financial issues you raised, we will present this to Planning Commission. We're happy to do that.
This is Commissioner Walk. I have a few interrelated comments. First of all, I appreciate and I share Commissioner Mobilio's viewpoint, not only from the standpoint of prudent resource utilization, but also this is a very unique property, and I'm not sure how much consideration should be given to change an ordinance for one property. Right. I make that comment really just to sort of expand upon what Commissioner Mobilio said. Here's my thoughts otherwise. I think the most the BOC should do on this is to take this under advice and not take any other action at this time. And by that, I mean, do not send this to the Planning Commission. And I'll tell you the reasons why I feel that way. I have great respect for the Zoning Hearing Board. I've attended a few meetings within the past year, several months, including when Commissioner Mobilio was on the Zoning Hearing Board. They are the experts. They are professionals. They are attorneys. The solicitor, Maria Mullane, is absolutely outstanding. So I trust the Zoning Hearing Board and its decision-making ability. I attended part of the last Zoning Hearing Board meeting, and one reason I say we should take this under advisement, I don't think the BOC should do anything until we have the opportunity to review not just the summary of the last Zoning Hearing Board meeting, but the entire transcript. And that will provide us with all the testimony made by the appellant, Mr. Jaffer, and his attorney, and the testimony by the objectors, and including attorney Joel Wiener and his client. I think we need all that information before we do anything or make any decisions. And we should have the opportunity to speak directly with the appellant. We have that opportunity tonight with Mr. Bubba and Mr. Jaffer if he chooses to speak. We should also have the opportunity to speak with the objectors and their clients. I'll add one last point. I don't think we've yet to see this evening the layout for this property. I don't think, well, I have to see the transcript to understand what the Zoning Hearing Board said about whether there's a hardship in order to grant this variance for impervious area. I don't believe there is a hardship. We haven't had a discussion about how could the impervious area be reduced in order to possibly get under the limit within the boundaries of the current zoning ordinance. So those are my thoughts at this time. Sorry I went a little longer than I thought. I'll come back to this point. I don't think the BOC should do anything except take this under advisement, including acquiring additional information. And I don't think we should send this to the Planning Commission at this time at all.
I have to chime in for 1 second if I could. You've heard me say this a million times. I don't know much about this project at all, but what I do believe in is the process. It is, I believe we should pass it along to the planning board, give the applicant the opportunity to present their case, their information, have it go through the process, gather the information as it should be, and give it a chance to look at the ordinance. You know, is the ordinance something that needs to be modified? Very similar to what, you know, you had mentioned, George, about the Pasako issue. You know, maybe this is something that truly does need modifications, and, you know, will it benefit this particular individual? Well, sure, but it could benefit other people. Maybe it's one person, maybe it's 3 people, maybe it's 300. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's still their right to go through the process to see if the change is reasonable to make for the township. So in my opinion, I believe we should follow the process and allow the applicant to go through planning, present their case, present their information, and then make our decisions from there. If we stop it and do nothing at this point, it's dead in the water. He can do nothing. There's nothing he can do. So at least allow the gentleman and the team that they have to go through the process, present their information, and then make a decision once everything is out on the table. That's how I believe this should be handled. And I believe that is their right to be able to do that.
Can I,
So I have a question. President
Mr.
Morgan,
Buba, hold on 1 second, Commissioner Walk. Let's just let everybody speak, and then we'll come back and then answer some more questions from you. Attorney Buba, you had something to say?
Yeah, I wanted to address one thing, Mr. Walk. If you can put up the second page of the exhibits, it says impervious cover by range. Yes. So just to demonstrate that this is not specific to my client, everything shown in red on this chart demonstrates the deficiency of your ordinance, because everything in red, Mr. Wolf, even though the lot size is larger, and you'll see that happens even at 6,000 square feet, even though 6,000 square feet is obviously larger than 5,000, someone with a 6,000 square foot lot is permitted less impervious. So more than half of the items on the exhibit in front of you show you how many people could be impacted by the fact that you've done this cliff vesting rather than marginal calculations in your zoning ordinance. And if you truly want to give the appellant or the other party the right to comment, that only happens once this is advertised. They would show up at Planning Commission and they'd show up at Board of Commissioners. So the only way you would get input is by following that process. One last thing. The Zoning Hearing Board was very sympathetic. But I will say this, they appropriately said, we have no tools to give you the relief that you want. Just like Mr. Pasako, we don't have the tools to give you what you need, but the ordinance might make sense to be modified. And so we're just following that exact same process. But this is not just an individual landowner that's being helped. Your ordinance is being helped. And I didn't really want to go here, but I would suggest that if you don't fix the ordinance, either this way or another way, someone who's in one of these red columns could presumably challenge your zoning ordinance and really put up whatever they wanted on a lot, because they would not be bound by an impervious coverage schedule that is not sensible.
So if I understand it correctly, Attorney Buva is basically saying that the zoning as it stands now is flawed. It's not the way it should be, and we should look at it, and I agree with that.
I'd like to
I
comment.
truly think we need to allow the process to go forward.
You know, if it's not the way it should be, and we should take a look at it, take a look at other townships and other zoning ordinances, see what they have. Why is the difference between 15% to 25%, that big drop in it? I don't know why, but we should find out.
If I may comment, I thank you all for your comments tonight so far. I'm just curious, having attended plenty of zoning hearing board meetings myself, I'm very thankful for our board and what they do. Obviously, this is being presented to us during courtesy of the floor, and we don't have full presentation or even our staff input at this point. They said they were neutral. So it would be my thought that we should table it, and mirroring what Commissioner Wolk, I was wondering how to get the information. If we could get a copy of the transcript from zoning hearing so that we can get the background on how that hearing went, you know, what the differing sides stated for the record. And we could certainly take it at our next board meeting to decide whether we want to send it to planning or not at that point, once this full board has enough information on what brought us to this point as far as zoning.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Wolf again. So I thank Commissioner Kelly for that. And it circles back to what I wanted to say to President Morgan. So when I said I would table it at this time and not send it to the Planning Commission at this time, I said that because I would like to have more information. In other words, we heard this earlier this evening. I'd like to have an informed decision. I'd like to have, and I would encourage the other commissioners to want to have the transcripts from the zoning hearing board, including the appellant's testimony, including the objector's testimony. And then once we have that, we can make a decision what to do and whether to send it to Planning Commission.
Mr. Wolk, I've used this example before. In this current situation, and I'll ask Mr. Zader to chime in. This is all we're really saying is, in an unusual example, we'd like to file a lawsuit. And if you're the judge, we're not asking you to say whether we win or lose the lawsuit. We're just saying, can we go in the courthouse and file the lawsuit? And the facts and evidence and all of those items will be back before you when the actual ordinance is presented. I'm just asking for, you know, please pass go. I want to get on the monopoly board so that at the right place, you can either stop me or approve. You can either stop or approve the ordinance. You're merely saying, yes, you can present this to the Planning Commission, is not in any way a prejudgment by you. And frankly, no matter what you see in the zoning opinion, let's assume the zoning opinion says that we fully support what they're doing here. That doesn't mean I win. And if they say we don't support this, it doesn't mean we lose. So the zoning opinion for one individual case isn't going to fix all these red dots on this page. That's only going to happen by the process playing itself out.
Well, if I can just add to that, to use your analogy, Attorney Buva, you're right. You're asking us to just allow the lawsuit to be filed, but as you know, if you don't have the proper cover sheet and you don't file it in the right department, you don't do all those procedural things, you don't get to see courtroom. So in my opinion, we're laying out for you what we'd like to see, what the requirements should be. I'm less concerned about the transcript of zoning, having been on the zoning board for 3 years. I'm less concerned about the transcript than I am about for lack of a better term, legislative history of why this ordinance is the way it is. I mean, I'd like to know why this ordinance was enacted the way it was. I find it hard to believe that there were no discussions about, this jump from category to category without a marginal increase, as you call it. So, anytime someone comes before the board, and I was the same, consistently did this when I was on the zoning board, asking for some kind of change, I want to know why it exists in the first place. Before I can wrap my mind around approving a change, I need to know why it was done this way to begin with. So I don't know if we have those people available to speak now, but to bring this up during courtesy of the floor, to echo what Mike and Diane said, we're somewhat caught off guard because we don't really have the information that we need to make a decision on it. I understand you just want us to pass along to the planning commission, but at the end of the day, we're the elected officials that have to be the gatekeepers to this sort of thing, and that's why you're here first, because there's a process, and there's a reason why we're standing in the way, because we're expected to ask these questions and make these requirements. So, at the end of the day, I probably would agree to allow it to move to planning and let them make the decision, but I would agree that I think we need more information, and it would be more appropriate if we put this on a future meeting, or whether it's advertised, or at least a more thorough vetting process of why this ordinance exists the way it does.
Matt, I will share with you this. That's all part of the process. So we're not agreeing to anything tonight. All that's being asked is, will we agree to pushing this to planning to allow this to be vetted through planning? Planning doesn't make the final decision either. We do. So what happens is all those questions that you just brought up, all that background information that you're looking for, Commissioner Walk, all that's figured out and vetted through the whole process to determine whether or not an ordinance revision is justified, where the history came. And I don't mean to throw Greg Adams under the bus on this, but maybe Greg might have some insight. I know he's got a lot of historical knowledge on some of these ordinances and some of the quirks that might be in some of them. So, we might want to ask him if he has any input or information available this evening to share on this. But at the end of the day, and you guys hear me talk about this a million times, it's part of the process. And I believe we need to let the process play out. We pass it on to staff and planning, see if this is a justifiable change to our ordinance. Everything that came up in zoning is going to be rehashed and talked about as part of this. We can be gathering information as well, but to stop it at our level just because, we don't know the end game. Of course we don't know the end game. We don't know what we're going to vote at the end of the day. We don't know because we don't have all the details. So allow it to go through the process so that we can get all that information. Allow the groups and commissions we have in place do what they do best, and our staff. So, that's truly how the process works.
Commissioner Morgan, I'm willing to agree to vote or to agree to let this go to planning, but I would just caution those interested parties that if this gets approved by planning and then comes back before us and we don't have the answers to the questions that we've raised today, if we don't have that legislative history, if we don't have the zoning transcript that Mike had requested, I can pretty much guarantee the applicant that this is not going to, even if it comes out of planning, it's not going to get approved here. So I would just caution.
No guarantees. Yep.
I have to ask this question. I'm sorry. So President Morgan, you've stated several times a reference to the process. What is the process? Why isn't the process that the Board of Commissioners can request additional information before making a decision whether to send it to the Planning Commission or not? Why isn't that part of the process?
Well, Mike, what's the difference? What I don't understand. Whether it goes back to planning and you start the process of gathering the information and looking into whether or not it makes sense to changing that ordinance, I don't understand why you're against doing that. That doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, it makes it virtually difficult for anybody to do any changes with our ordinance if the buck stops with us needing a million different things. Isn't that what we have staff and some of these other boards and commissions set up to help do? It doesn't, I'm losing sight of, you know, I'm not saying we shouldn't know what's happening. By no means. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying, let's allow the people that we've appointed and put in some of these positions to do the work that they're designated to do. That's the process.
So let me ask if this is part of the process. I'm only asking to get educated. Is it part of the process for the commissioners to request certain information on this subject and receive it, such as the zoning hearing board transcript? Is that part of the process?
I don't believe it's part of the written process for approvals, but I don't see why they can't ask for that. But it doesn't mean it should stall them going back to planning to start doing what needs to be done to gather the proper information to determine whether or not this is a change that makes sense. I'm not even saying it makes sense. I don't know. But why don't we get things rolling to find out if it does? There's obviously an issue here. And looking at the chart that Attorney Buba put in front of us, all those red marks make absolutely no sense. It doesn't make sense. I mean, if you think that makes sense, you can explain to me how, because I don't think that makes sense. There's definitely something that needs to be looked at. So why don't we do that?
Mr. Wolk, I would suggest, to answer your question, that at this point, particularly since it's presented as courtesy of the floor, it's exactly that. It's courtesy of the floor to allow us to explain it, but it's also the courtesy of allowing the process to move forward. If we need to delay it at this point, gather all of that information, we effectively will try this case next month in front of you, go to Planning Commission, and then try this case in front of you once again. So I believe your role right now is simply respectfully to say, thank you for presenting this. We'll see you in a couple of months. I really think that is the process. And I would make one other suggestion. If this were a absolutely ridiculous non-starter, I think your staff, rather than saying we're neutral, would say there's been a whole lot of thought behind the model that's in place right now, and we don't want you to approve this. We're going to fight it at Planning Commission, and we'll fight it when we're back in front of you. I think their silence or their neutrality on this point is really based upon this is the first time they're seeing the impact of the graduated numbers that have been used.
Mr. Morgan, do we need to make a vote? Do we need to make a vote to do this?
We really don't. And Attorney Zader, I'll move to you. It's really just if I understand correctly, it's really just the consensus of the board to pass it along to planning. I mean, we certainly could do a motion if that's appropriate, but I don't know if it's required. Attorney Zader, thoughts?
It is discretionary with the board whether to refer to the Planning Commission or not. And given the discussion that has occurred up until now and the difference of opinions, my recommendation would be that it's either a motion to table or a motion to move it to the Planning Commission.
Well, in that case, then I make a motion to move it to Planning Commission to allow the process to play out to further determine whether or not this makes sense. That would be my motion.
And I'll second it.
Renee, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Wall.
May I ask a question? It's been said before. I just want to confirm the process. If it goes to the Planning Commission, they are a recommending body, and then it will be back in front of the BOC. Is that correct?
It absolutely will. Yes.
Commissioner Walk, I'll just add to that also, because this is a requested text amendment And as of today, at courtesy of the floor, there's been no draft of that text amendment. Somewhere in that process, that will have to be put together. And I would also note, with regard to Commissioner Mobilio's earlier comment, there is a process, I believe, and perhaps George Kinney could comment on the detail, but when something is brought to the township for consideration, I believe there is a process for the applicant to post an escrow to cover township expenses in that process.
Okay. Yes, yep, affirmative. Yes, that's correct, Joe.
Okay, it's my vote. Thank you, everyone, for the input, including the education. I have no opinion for or against the appellant's request. I want to make that point clear. Nevertheless, I will vote no. I would prefer to table it.
Commissioner Mobilio.
I will vote yes with the comment that if, when this comes back before us, assuming Planning Commission suggests that we approve it, if questions that we had tonight can't be answered, or the documentation that we requested is not provided, or if the applicant simply says, you know, well, your people said it was okay, I'm going to tell you that it's going to be a big problem for me. I'm most likely going to vote against it. I expect that when it comes back before us, that there will not be a reliance on conversations that were had with staff, or, you know, oh, this is common sense, or I expect that there'll be a very thorough explanation, including legislative history and zoning board discussion when it comes back before us. So with that being said, I will vote yes for it to go to planning.
Commissioner Sutton.
I will vote yes, and I will also thank Attorney Buba for highlighting a potential, and again, I'm saying a potential flaw in our zoning ordinance.
Commissioner Kelly.
I don't have an opinion one way or the other on this because I just simply do not have enough information. So I'm going to vote no, because I would have voted to table it and bring it back in 2 weeks at our next meeting when we had time to gather more information and make a better educated decision.
And Commissioner Morgan.
Yes. And again, you know, I don't have all the details either. I don't know much about this at all. But I do believe that we have something in front of us that potentially could have impact to many other users, not just to the prospective client that Attorney Buba has. And for that reason, it deserves to be looked at by the Planning Commission and further vetted. It makes sense for us to look at it. So that's my reasoning and my vote for yes. So motion carries. We will be sending this off for planning for further discussion, and I think you should definitely take into consideration all of the questions that this board has had regarding this particular subject matter, and have those details prepared for further discussion at the time when it comes back to the board.
We will. Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Have a good evening. All right, Chief Carr, what else did we have on courtesy of the floor? I know we have a couple people who have put in requests.
Yep, Susan Shortell, if she's here.
All right, well, maybe Susan will join us here in a minute. You want to move on to the next person?
Yep, Lee Solt.
Thank you, Commissioners. Just a question, can you give me an update or give us an update on what's going on with the new website redevelopment?
Yeah, we can. We are in our agreement, as we had stated back when we did the proposal, the first part of the website's the second, a phase that we're working on, which will take longer. We will make the transition to the new agenda software this summer at some point. And then the design of the website, we've signed the agreement and are just doing some background information and work right now. But we will keep you updated as we move into the process. And there will be prototypes too. So again, We are on schedule for that. Agenda software and the video will be first, and then the website will be into the fall.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Do we
Right.
have David Burke?
Yes, thank you. I did submit a question, and the question is, are all of the videos for BOC meetings and Planning Commission meetings still being posted on the township website? It does not seem that the last few meetings videos have been posted. The only one that I see there is the April 15th meeting. May 6th, May 20, and June 3rd are not to be found. I've looked and several other citizens have looked.
Yeah, I'll look into it for you, David. I know that I have uploaded them to YouTube and given the links out, and we've put them out there. So,
well,
we can double check on the website.
Comment,
Tracy Fainal answered your email and indicated where they are found.
oh, she did? Okay, I didn't, okay. We did find them for May 6th, May 20, and June 3rd on YouTube by Googling and getting into YouTube, but again, that was the way we found them. They weren't on the site. But again, if Tracy,
they are.
that's good. Okay.
They are on the site. I see them now. And
okay.
as Tracy told you, they're on, when you go to the township, they're on the board docs. If you hit board docs, they're all there. And she sent you an email with exactly how to get to it.
Okay, great. That'd be fine. Thank you much. Appreciate it.
Okay. Steve,
And then,
anybody else? We could go.
Is Susan Shortell, are you on still? I actually don't see her on the call anymore, Tori. She was on there earlier.
All right. All right.
I'm going to invite David Burke back. He has another question.
Yeah, one more question. Thank you. Referring to the June 3rd meeting, several citizens and at least one commissioner asked about some of the history on the particular ordinance that was passed. The ordinance that had to do with the township manager and the board interaction. And the question was, why was that ordinance rescinded some 6 years ago? Looking for the history, just as Mr. Mobilio suggested, history is important. Commissioner Morgan, you had promised to go back and look at the meeting notes and your personal notes and so forth and try to resurrect some of that history. I was wondering if you had a chance to do that yet, and if not, perhaps at a future meeting.
So, Mr. Burke, I will share with you this. Those changes back in 2014 were, in fact, personnel related, and most of the discussion that revolved around that, because it was personnel related, was discussed in executive session. That's why you don't see a lot in the meeting minutes, and there is not much I can share because it was executive session material, and I am bound to that executive session rule. So that's as much as I can tell you at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Are there any other questions or comments for courtesy of the floor?
Commissioner Morgan, this is Tony Talariza. Can I make a courtesy of the floor?
Oh, you sure can, Tony. Go ahead.
Thank you. A few weeks ago, Accent School of Dance was supposed to have the recital, but because of COVID, it was obviously canceled. They had a parade through Tillman 8, which is where it was located. And South Whitehall had 2 officers out leading the parade in the car, and all the little kids dressed up, and they love seeing it. So thank you to South Whitehall for that.
Fantastic. Tony, thanks for sharing that story. That's great.
You're welcome.
That's great to hear, Tony. Thank you.
No problem.
Excellent. Excellent. Keep up the good work, Glenn, and the entire team. Great job. All right.
Thank you very much.
Any other courtesy of the floor? All right. I'll make a note that our invoices and purchasing requisitions have been reviewed by the township manager and the director of finance. I do need a motion this evening to authorize that our checks be issued to pay our bills as tabulated. Do I hear said motion?
So moved.
We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Kelly. Do I hear a second? I'll second. Second from Commissioner Morgan. Can I have a roll call vote, please, Renee?
Commissioner Walk,
Aye.
Commissioner Mobilio,
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly,
Aye.
Commissioner Sutton,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. We have no executive session planned for this evening, but I do need a motion for adjournment. Do I hear said motion?
So moved.
We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Kelly, second from Commissioner Walk. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Have a
Motion
good night,
carries. Have a lovely evening, everybody. Stay safe and stay well.